For those of you who don't know me, I'm Marcela Santos. I'm from the ALS Association back in Colombia in South America. I'm also a board member in the ALS MND International Alliance, and it's a pleasure to be hosting this afternoon. I'm going to be your moderator for this section. This section is called Programming for PALS and CALS. First up, we have an update from my favorite council. It's the Alliance's PALS and CALS Advisory Council, or PCAC for short. I always talk about this in the board meetings. We can't do anything about them without them. So this is our most important council, in my opinion, in the Alliance. So please welcome Sarah Feldman, Gudjon Sigurdsson, Angelique Van de Liet, Phil Green, Bruce Virgo, and Felipe Ocampo.
Thank you very much, and I agree, Marcela, it's also my favorite committee, council, all the above. Again, welcome. My name is Sarah Feldman. I'm the physical therapist and clinical liaison at the ALS Hope Foundation, and I'm also the chair of the PCAC. And I'm speaking today on behalf of myself and Gudjon Sigurdsson, who is the board liaison to the PCAC, and he's not able to be with us today. So what we're going to show you today is a little bit of a snapshot into the work that the PALS and CALS Advisory Council has put on throughout the year. And I'm just warning you right now that you're going to be impressed. This is an amazing group, and they really do a lot of work. There's constantly meetings going on, so we have a lot to say and a lot to let you know about. So this is our mission. This is the reason. This is the why for the PCAC committee or advisory council. But one of the things that you really need to know is it's many voices. It's not just one voice. So it's everybody coming together and bringing their voices and bringing their thoughts and opinions. And it was mentioned earlier today, so I'm going to reiterate it, that people living with ALS, MND, and their caregivers don't just bring that diagnosis and that title to what they do. They bring all of their background. They bring everything they are and everything that who they are to the table. So you're going to hear a lot about that as well. And we've also heard over and over again, this year especially, I'm really pleased to hear how often all the people presenting, we heard Sally, we heard Tammy and Lauren, we heard Kalanit, we heard Tatiana talk about the general. Alper talked about the work that he's doing. Rachel mentioned a lot of the work that's being done in Scotland, and it's all being done by the patient advocates that are pushing things forward. And I think that's really just fantastic to hear so much of that this year. And of course, as Marcela said, Gudjon has been just behind this, saying all the time, nothing about us without us. So here is the superheroes of the council. That's the slide you didn't see, no. So we mentioned Gudjon already, Bruce Virgo, Phil Green from the USA, Lee Millard from England, Angelique Van der Liet from the Netherlands, Norman McIsaac from Canada, Philippe Ocampo now from Colombia, Albert Q from Malaysia, and Alper Kaya from Turkey. I'd also like to mention that Bernice Yu was on our council and voluntarily stepped down this year, but she did a lot of work behind the scenes as well. And Vanessa Baez was a CALS from Colombia who also voluntarily stepped down. So now it is time to hear from the group as to what they've been up to. And we're going to start with a video from Bruce.
Thank you, Sarah, and hello from Edinburgh, Scotland. I'm sorry that I can't be in sunny San Diego this year, but I trust you are all well and enjoying the winter warmth of the climate there. It's certainly warmer than here. As you see, this year's peacock is drawn from 4 of the 6 populated continents. Our disease doesn't discriminate, as you already know, and as a result, the skill sets of the peacock members are also as diverse as our geographical spread. Accordingly, the breadth and variety of the work the peacock can carry out is considerable and perhaps surprising to some. However, it is important to recall that becoming a PALS hasn't robbed us of what we were able to achieve before, with our minds at least. 2022 has seen a number of earlier carried over projects completed, such as the website review and the art and music projects. There are some continuing projects that, due to their size or complexity, will carry over into 2023. However, many are newly instigated, such as the Student Award and the Breaking Bad News projects. And these are brought to peacock either from within or by suggestions made by the board or by member associations. The amount of work carried out this year has been mammoth. When you consider that we are not only PALS and CALS, with all that entails, but are also volunteers carrying out most work remotely from one another and spread across the globe and many different time zones. These 2 slides list the work performed over 2022, much of which will continue through into the new year. Projects are worked on either by the whole of peacock or by smaller satellite groups that meet separately, sometimes co-opting relevantly experienced people to assist before reporting back to the regular monthly peacock meetings. Now, some of my peacock colleagues will now present on a couple of our projects in more detail, starting with one of my PALS brothers. Over to you, Felipe.
This is why we work on the basis of each jurisdiction, in this case, fundamental rights. The world is constantly changing, and we must be up to date. Every year, we review our current fundamental rights, and this year, we went further. The questions were if we need to make some changes and how we are respect of the world. We understand each culture and government is different, so this is not an easy work, but it is worth it for our pals and CALS. We decided to check the fundamental rights from United Nations Convention. We compared and checked which ones can apply for our community and get some ideas. Also, we did some research in different countries, such as Canada, United States, United Kingdom, Scotland, and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD countries. These include 38 countries, France, Belgium, Germany, and others. The fundamental rights got reviewed and updated, and we are currently working in bringing them to life by building a document that provides aspirational examples on the Rights Alliance member organizations. Thank you.
Phil, you're next.
All right. So, over the course of the last year and even dipping into a little more than a year, we've had several roundtables sponsored by the Alliance, and participation by the PCAC has been, I would say, not even, the word isn't encouraged. It was, well, I was designated a lead in one of those roundtables, so it was a part of our culture or responsibility to be not just attendees, but to be participants and be active participants in planning these roundtables. And well, by doing so, we help facilitate dialogue around how we could improve global collaboration with regulatory agencies. And several of us outside of that roundtable became part of the working group that was established to try and help facilitate that. We had an amazing genetics summit, which was a follow-up of a genetics roundtable we had last year. And the focus this year was around, to be candid, a lot of the things that me, as a person living with ALS MND, thought we needed and was missing in our global approach to genetics and collecting genetic data at a global level. And this international gathering of experts in the genetics and natural history fields for ALS and MND all look to the people living with ALS MND that participated, look to us as their equal in the discussions and dialogues. And we, as people with lived experience, our opinions were valued and help drive the conversation and help determine what the priorities and projects that were the outcomes of that workshop were to be, and that the Alliance would hopefully tackle this next coming year. And then we have most recently had a workshop that I was fortunate to be a presenter in. Well, I say that loosely, kind of like me being a presenter in that last session. My friend, Dr. Danielle Boyce, was really the strong voice, and I supported her. But in last year's ALS MND Symposium, we had produced a poster that was that articulated the results of a survey that we conducted prior to the event, and it really was about people living with ALS and MND's perspective on the ALS FRSR. And lo and behold, that poster won, I guess it was like the public, there's like a favorite poster by the attendees. We happened to win that last year. Well, we presented the results at a workshop about ALS FRSR and outcome measures in ALS MND a couple of months ago. And out of that workshop, a lowly member of the PCAC kind of off the cuff just said, why don't we create a consortium that focuses on developing the outcome measures that members of the global community can be a part of, as well as regulatory agencies. And out of those, we can have working groups, so there is ownership of the ALS FRSR. There's ownership of any other outcome measure, such as roads or anything else that would be developed by this consortium. And now the Alliance is hopefully going to play a vital role in the creation of this consortium, which was, thrown out there from a PCAC members' involvement in a workshop sponsored by the Alliance. So I think what we're doing and our voices are being heard and have an impact by the global ALS MND community, particularly when it comes to these roundtables that we participate in. And first off, I want to say thank you for hearing us and allowing us to have a seat at the table. I'm done. Thank you.
Well done. Yes, and you're right. People do just take things and run with them. So next, we're going to hear from Angelique Vanderlee via video.
And we got something new. The creation of a new award. The Student Award for very smart students all over the world. The creation of an award of students who have a project for a better life for ALS MND patients. I'm very proud of this. And we were busy with building Alliance capacity We did a website review on PALS and CALS section. So what's really important and what kind of information do you need? And we had a branding, universal symbol for ALS MND. You will see the logo everywhere now.
I don't know if that's the end. No, I didn't think so. I thought we did more than that. Was that the end of Angelique's? Okay. So what we talked about so far, when we meet at the beginning of the year, and this year we're actually going to have new members come on, but you'll hear about that next year. But when we meet at the beginning of the year, we come up with a work plan for the year, and usually about 3 months out and then 6 months out. We don't just do it 12 months and stop there, because as you just heard, people come up with ideas and they run with them. So we come up with our work plan and things that the people on the advisory council would like to work on, or maybe something that the board of directors of the alliance is asking us to work on. So those are how we come up with some of those ideas. But then people also come to us from outside, and they ask for opinions of the people living with ALS and MND and their caregivers, for clinical trials, for different things. And so these are some of the focus groups now that have been formed that different members of the team and maybe even some additional people are working on. So the clinical trials, different updates, discussions. Phil's very involved with that particular focus group. The Breaking Bad News focus group, which is discussing how people get the news of having ALS MND. The WAVE team presentations from WAVE Life Sciences, they present it, and there's a group now that's going to be giving them feedback on the wearable devices and things like that. University of College London is one of the student groups, and one of the reasons why we thought about doing that student award was because they came to us, to the council at first with the idea of what they were working on, and they wanted the input of the advisory council. And then the advisory council took it the next step and said, okay, but we also want to tell you what we'd like. So that there's more, it's going now in both directions. And so what's new are some things that we haven't completed yet this past year, but we're very interested in. So art and music or creativity, it doesn't have to be art and music. This is something that people are very interested in learning about. What are people around the globe doing if they're interested in music, if they're interested in art? Maybe they're a poet. What are they doing? How can they do those outlets, whether it's through assistive technology or different ways that people can assist? It's just a new way of looking at that, and then we want to be able to put it out there so anyone in the community has access to it. There's an expression of gratitude where the advisory council would like to thank people out there. And one of the first groups that they're looking at thanking is coordinators of trial sites throughout around the globe, to say thank you for the work that they're doing. A big issue that we're very interested in, I think that the International Alliance is especially, this is really in the wheelhouse, is traveling with wheelchairs. It's a huge issue, as many of you are aware. Traveling within your own country, power wheelchairs, manual wheelchairs, it actually doesn't really matter. There's difficulty with all of them. And I think we really could have a voice in this and maybe give some input to the airlines on this issue. So that's something that there's a group that's going to be working on. There's also a group that wants to know more about what power wheelchairs can do beyond, your usual commute or using in the home, like going out, going on the beach, going off-roading. And one that Gudjon is very interested in is this safe driving, the backup cameras and sensors so that he knows what's behind him when he's going back and doesn't, something that's perhaps not thousands of dollars to add on to your wheelchair. So these are some of the projects that the committee has come up, council has come up with that they're interested in looking at. So of course we want to say thank you. We'd also like to thank Gethin Thomas and Blair Casey for coming, they attended different, our meetings this year and spoke on behalf of the Scientific Advisory Council and the ITAC to the group. And of course we have to thank Kathy, Shay, Jess, and Liana who does the transcriptions from our meetings. Anything else? Uh-oh, Kathy has a question. I have it?
Yeah.
I thought you had it.
I would actually just like to add one thank you, and that's to every caregiver that helps every person participate on the PALS and CALS Advisory Council. Phil reminded me of this very well on our last roundtable, which started at 7 Eastern Time, which was 4 Pacific Time for him, and he just casually mentioned at the beginning of the roundtable that he wouldn't be there if Jennifer hadn't helped him be there. And so I want to thank every caregiver.
No questions.
Yes, you can join.
Can you elaborate on breaking the bad news focus group? Like, what exactly doing in that?
Elaborate on which?
Breaking the bad news?
I would let, so I'm not on that working group, so Kathy would like to answer in the back. I don't have to be on every working group.
That's not an ongoing working group. That was the list that Sarah went through on the slide there was different focus groups that we had done in 2022. And one of the presentations that is happening at the Allied Professionals Forum later this week is called Breaking the News in ALS MND. And before they presented at the Allied Professionals Forum, they wanted to get feedback from a group of people living with ALS. So our PCAC very graciously provided a focus group for them to hear the presentation ahead of time to make sure it was hitting the mark appropriately.
Kathy sits on many of the different committees and should probably be up here. Great, Jan.
Thank you very much for presentation. Just a question about this logo. Am I right that you're trying to have a universal worldwide logo besides the logo of each foundation worldwide? Or could you explain a little bit more about the idea and the goal?
I was.
Yeah.
So, we thought it would be nice to have something that was universal, that when somebody saw it, they thought immediately of ALS MND. The cornflower is representative in some countries, but not all. So we thought we would do a landscape assessment of what logos are being used, and is there an opportunity to create an alliance logo that would augment the other association logos that would that could be used almost like a hug. If you can think of another logo hugging and complimenting an organization logo, to show the relationship between that organization and the global community through the alliance. We didn't succeed, so before you give me a thumbs up, but that was the intent.
And that slide had all the symbols from all the organizations in the room. Kathy wants to talk again?
Oh,
Wait. Yeah. I told you she.
My apologies. I wanted to comment specifically on the logo one before a new question came out. And I think it's important to differentiate between logo and symbol. So symbolically, we all know what a pink ribbon means. And what Phil mentioned about, is there some way we can hug everybody's logo to show that we're all working on this together and so on. And we didn't solve it. What we decided is that this needed to be a branding project, similar to what Rachel talked about this morning in Scotland. And so that is something ongoing that we're going to look at. But through this, we did look back at the history of the Alliance logo, and I think it's important to note that that logo was developed a long time ago, and there was a lot of thought that went into it in terms of what it represents and why it's teal. And the reason that it's teal is because teal doesn't show up in the flag of any country, so there's no bias in our logo towards any particular part of the world. So when the PCAC discussed that, one of the things we said was that there's strong reasons for keeping the logo of the Alliance the way it is, but still trying to embrace this concept that Phil talked about. So, there's both the symbol and the logo, and that's kind of where we left it at that point.
I think it's important to note that Bernice, you did a tremendous amount of work in cataloging all the global organization logos and presenting them to us, and she did a phenomenal job.
Rob, do you have a question? No?
if there's time, if there's time, I would ask.
Marcella hasn't come up here yet. So
Okay. Well, it's actually building off what Marcella was saying earlier, that she's always kind of driven by the "nothing without us" catchphrase, I'll call it. So the catchphrase is in action here, with the PCAC. So I was wondering, would the SAB or the Scientific Advisory Committee that we heard from, the ITAC, the PCAC, maybe this is a question for the Alliance, but I'm curious to hear from the people with ALS on the panel's viewpoint on this. Do you think that this model of having a patient and advisory committee should be a standard part of every patient advocacy organization representing patients? And if so, do you think that the model that exists today on the Alliance is the right model that patient advocacy groups should look at as they build that out, or how would you change this so that it can be localized?
That's for you, Dan.
I'll speak first if you want to go after me. I think you know what my answer is. I sit on a lot of patient advisory committees, including yours. So I think it is a model. I think that the lived experience should be represented, whether it's a patient or a caregiver. And I'm going to say every aspect of this disease, whether it's drug development, whether it's what research should we prioritize. I think our perspective is unique, and as you may know, we'll push things to be done on the ALS clock, or we may push you in a direction that you're not comfortable with because you may think it will hurt our feelings. But if you hear from us that that's the right direction, then I think we can ease those concerns. So I think our voices should be represented, and we should have a seat at whatever table is available to us, where there are decisions being made on the future of our disease. That's my personal but strong opinion.
I think the way it is, it's perfect because we have perspectives from people living with ALS and people who not, so we complement each other.
Any questions online?
Very good. Okay, let's give a round of applause for our peacock.
Great job.